been almost a year since Windows 11 came out, but the transition haven't been smooth for some users. From things like getting less performance in gaming to others annoying bugs, now Windows 11 is going through a shaky start. While still Windows remains the de facto operating system for personal computers, it isn't without viable alternatives. The most popular of them is Linux. Some of you may be familiar with the term, while others of you will be shouting and screaming in excitement. So let us talk about Linux, focusing mostly in two versions of it, Zorin OS and Pop OS, and why I think that it's about time that people upgraded to a Linux-based operating system instead of continuing with Windows. For those of you that don't know the world of Linux, let us go to some of the basics. Linux is an operating system just like Windows, but unlike Windows, it's an open source and community-developed operating system. This means that the public have access to the operating system source code, and they are allowed to do basically anything that you want with it. And people have from wacky branches of Linux, just for the fun of it, to actual serious operating system that millions of people use, like Ubuntu. Another really interesting thing about Linux is that almost every major computing platform supports it. From mobile phones to supercomputers and servers, Linux supports everything, making it one of the most widely supported operating systems out there. Linux as well can be really custom and versatile. That is pretty much unprecedented. Linux is used in a wide array of applications, and the applications are basically the backbone of our modern-day computing. From running a server and cloud operating system on data farms to developer OS for making software applications, Linux can be optimized for almost anything and everything. While all of that sounds great and dandy, you might be wondering, but what is it for me? My computer is doing completely fine on Windows 11, so why I tell you to change, or at least to try Linux over Windows for your operating system? Guys, that is a fair question. So let's go through some of the benefits of using Linux and why a switch may be good for you. To start everything off, Linux is mostly completely free. Yeah, at least 99% of the Linux distributions are free because of Linux is a free-to-use operating system. Linux falls under the free and open source software category. So not only is Linux free to use, but it's also even free to develop for your own personal needs. While these have many benefits as an institutional level, like for example in the area of cybersecurity, when the compromised operating system can bring countries to their knees. So countries, for example, like China, have developed their own private operating system developed on Linux. For an average Joe like you and me, that means not paying for those hefty Windows licensing fees for every device that you own, and the freedom to make it your own with somehow of a learning curve. Depending upon what Linux-based distribution you are using, it's effortless to maintain your OS, as the user can centrally update all of the OS and all of the software applications installed. This isn't very much not the case in Windows, where every third-party application have to be updated individually. Another great thing about Linux is that it's very stable. Most of us must have experienced how a freshly installed Windows system runs extremely fast, and that the same system becomes slow after 6 months to 1 year, and we are left scratching our heads like, what is going on here? Why is this happening? And the only way to fix this problem is to do a fresh install, which ruins a perfectly good day. Not only do you have to back up all of your data and do a fresh Windows install, you also have to install all of your software and applications. On the other hand, for most of the distros, Linux runs exactly as fast as it did the first time installed and even after several years. A testament to this stability is the fact that right now, 96.3% of the top million web servers are running on Linux. This is because Linux is more stable and doesn't crash so often. And unlike Windows, you don't need to reboot a Linux server after every update or patch. Installing and using Linux on your system is the easiest way to avoid viruses and malware. In fact, Linux was designed with security in mind, so it's the case that you can even find distributions created specifically with privacy and security like TailOS, that you can watch a video of it right here. Linux does this by making it so that programs can't make changes to the system settings and configurations unless the user is logged as the root. The root is the equivalent to the administrator in Windows. And since most users don't need to log as root for most of their work, by design they can't do much damage to their system because they don't have access to do in the major system changes. The mostly that a virus can do is to damage some of your personal files. Also, Linux is compatible with lots of different systems and don't require TPM 2.0 or Secure Boot to be able to enjoy in an older hardware. The first thing that comes in the mind to somebody that have heard a little bit about Linux is that this is somehow an OS that is limited to geeks, nerds, and to coders. But guys, contrary to that belief, Linux have now become very user-friendly. It had almost the same graphical user interface and functionality as Windows-based systems. This is especially true for Linux distributions like Zorin OS and Pop! OS. They are both offer Windows-like UI and functionality, but on a Linux system. So no, switching into Linux doesn't mean that you will be using your operating system by writing code in a green color with a black background, or that you're looking to your screen like the Matrix. Linux pretty functions and works like every Windows-based system or even Mac OS. Almost all of your favorite applications run on Linux. And in the rare cases where some of the applications that you want to use can only run on a Windows system, well, Linux have been given a solution for that. You can download Windows emulator like Wine and use that to run that application on a Linux system. When Linux was very limited a few years ago, today a computer running it can be almost indistinguishable from a computer running Windows. And even if you find yourself stuck on anything, the Linux community is really friendly, and with millions of tutorials and guides online, fixing anything is a breeze. For all the gamers among you, you might be wondering what it means to switch to Linux for someone that likes to enjoy PC games. Well, there have been the perception in the past that Linux is not gamer-friendly. Well guys, in reality, that is really far from the truth. A lot of games are designed for both Windows and Linux, so you can easily run those games, and in the case that a game that isn't available on Linux, you can just use one application like Play on Linux to run the Windows version of that game on your system. And also now guys, with Steam, and they're developed for the Steam Deck, that they are working really hard to improve the compatibility of titles for Linux. You can even find gaming-specific distros that they are light on the resources of your PC to give you all the use to the game that you want to play. If you don't know where to start, like I mentioned, a couple of Linux distributions, like for example Zorin OS, Pop! OS, and Ubuntu. You may be wondering what these are and what distribution is. A Linux distribution is an operating system that is built on the Linux kernel, so that OS on the backend works like a Linux system, but on the user side it will be a little bit different. Zorin OS and Pop! OS are two pretty popular Linux distributions. For someone starting out in the world of Linux, installing any of these should be a way to go. Steam games support both Zorin OS and Pop! OS, so you don't have to worry about choosing the wrong OS for a game either. The best part, guys, is that both Zorin OS and Pop! OS offers free and regular updates on the operating system. This means that it's not only secure but stable, and the best part is that both of them they are also made with beginners in mind, so you can have an easy transition into the Linux ecosystem. While there are dozens of other Linux-based operating systems floating around the internet, I will recommend these two. You won't go wrong with either one of these. And if you are still not sure that you want to do a complete change into Linux, don't worry, because most of the distros can be installed into a USB stick or external hard drive, so you can boot into it to test it and to use it for some time before you made up your mind. Or you can use a software inside of Windows like VirtualBox to run a virtual machine with your desired Linux distribution, or you can even test lots of different ones without making any definitive changes to your PC. So guys, if you are tired of the Windows box and looking to switch things up a little bit, Linux is the way to go. Even if you have an old laptop or a really old system lying around that you don't use anymore, it will be an amazing experience for you to start learning the Penguin ecosystem. If you guys are more interested into the subject and you are looking for anything in particular that you want to know, just leave me a comment. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more content like this one, subscribe and drop a like on the video if you find it useful. This really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks one more for watching, my friends, and like always, see you on the next time. Bye bye!